Welcome to the Huberman Lab podcast, where we discuss science and science-based tools for everyday life. I'm Andrew Huberman, and I'm a professor of neurobiology and ophthalmology at Stanford School of Medicine. Today we're discussing alcohol, one of the most commonly consumed substances on the planet Earth. I should mention that both humans and non-human animals consume alcohol, either for recreational purposes, because they like the feeling that it gives them, or for medicinal purposes, or for other purposes that we'll discuss. We are, of course, going to discuss the effects of alcohol on our biology, ranging from its effects on individual cells, on organs, and organ systems in our brain and body. We are also going to discuss the effects of alcohol. That is, what being inebriated really does to our thinking and our behavior and how it does it. And we are going to address what seems to be one of the more common questions out there, which is whether or not low to moderate amounts of drinking are better for our health than zero alcohol consumption at all. And of course, we will talk about severe alcohol intake, binge drinking. We will also talk about hangover and what science says about ways to reduce the effects of hangover, either by doing things that are inoculatory, meaning before you drink or while you drink, as well as things to do if you happen to have a hangover. We will discuss some of the genetic differences for alcohol and alcoholism. And we will discuss alcohol consumption in young people and how that can be especially detrimental for reasons that I think are going to be quite surprising to most of you. My goal is that by the end of today's episode, you will have a thorough understanding of what alcohol does to your brain and body, and that you will be able to make informed decisions as to whether or not you should be consuming zero, absolutely no alcohol, small to moderate amounts of alcohol. And again, we'll define exactly what that means, small to moderate amounts. And if you or somebody else that you know is consuming excessive amounts of alcohol that are clearly detrimental to your health, some of the better routes and resources that you can use in order to remove that dependence and or consumption. I'd like to preface all of that by saying that today's discussion is really geared toward giving you information. It is not about judging alcohol intake or lack of alcohol intake. I just want you to be able to make the most informed decision about alcohol possible. I'm pleased to announce that the Huberman Lab podcast is now partnered with Momentous Supplements. We partnered with Momentous for several important reasons. First of all, they ship internationally because we know that many of you are located outside of the United States. Second of all, and perhaps most important, the quality of their supplements is second to none, both in terms of purity and precision of the amounts of the ingredients. Third, we've really emphasized supplements that are single ingredient supplements and that are supplied in dosages that allow you to build a supplementation protocol that's optimized for cost, that's optimized for effectiveness, and that you can add things and remove things from your protocol in a way that's really systematic and scientific. If you'd like to see the supplements that we partner with Momentous on, you can go to livemomentous.com/Huberman. There you'll see those supplements, and just keep in mind that we are constantly expanding the library of supplements available through Momentous on a regular basis. Again, that's livemomentous.com/Huberman. Before we get into today's content in detail, I just want to answer a commonly asked question about alcohol consumption and the brain. And the question that so often comes up is whether or not low to moderate amounts of alcohol, so maybe one drink a day or one or two drinks a day kind of thing, whether or not that is bad for your brain, in particular, whether or not it causes degeneration of neurons or nerve cells. Now, the reason that question comes up so often is because for many years, it's been known that high levels of alcohol consumption, so 12 to 24 drinks per week, or more, is certainly causing neurodegeneration, in particular of the so-called neocortex, the outer layers of the brain that house associative memories, that house our ability to think and plan, that house our ability to regulate our more primitive drives according to context, etc. So to make very clear, drinking a lot, so having 3 or 4 drinks per night every night of the week is clearly bad for the brain. A recent study, however, finally addressed the question of whether or not low to moderate amounts of alcohol consumption can cause brain degeneration. The title of the study is Associations Between Alcohol Consumption and Gray and White Matter Volumes in the UK Biobank, the United Kingdom Biobank. First of all, gray matter are the neurons, that's the so-called cell bodies that house the genome of the cells, et cetera, and white matter is the connections, the fibers, the so-called axons of neurons. And it's called white matter because that that tissue is surrounded by a fatty tissue called myelin, which allows nerve cells to communicate with each other very quickly. So what this study did is it looked at the brains, both the gray matter and the white matter, of more than 30,000, indeed more than 35,000, generally healthy middle-aged and older adults in the United Kingdom who were drinking various amounts of alcohol. What they found was that even for people that were drinking low to moderate amounts of alcohol, so 1 or 2 drinks per day, there was evidence of thinning of the neocortex, so loss of neurons in the neocortex, and other brain regions. And I don't say this in order to cause alarm. I tell you this because they are important data, because they reveal and indeed answer the question that has been burning for so long as to whether or not chronic alcohol intake can disrupt the brain, even if the chronic intake is very low. Now, we should talk about what the word chronic means, because many people, when they hear the word chronic, think high levels of whatever intake, okay? So they think 5 drinks a night or 10 drinks a night, or people drinking every night. Now, in this study, they looked at people who, on average, were drinking 1 or 2 drinks per night. So that could be 14 drinks on the weekend. It could be 1 drink per night. It could be 7 drinks on Friday. In other words, on average, 1 or 2 drinks per night. And I think many people out there are drinking somewhere between 1 and 2 drinks per night or day of the week on average. So that would be 7 to 14 drinks per week. So this is an important study because it says that if you're consuming even just 7 glasses of wine across the week, it's likely that there is going to be some degeneration of your brain in response to that alcohol intake. Although, as mentioned earlier, we will talk about some of the things that can inoculate against some of that neuronal loss. For those of you that are interested in reading the study in more detail, we put a link to it in the show note captions. Before we begin, I'd like to emphasize that this podcast is separate from my teaching and research roles at Stanford. It is, however, part of my desire and effort to bring zero cost to consumer information about science and science-related tools to the general public. In keeping with that theme, I'd like to thank the sponsors of today's podcast. Our first sponsor is Levels. Levels is a program that lets you see how different foods affect your health by giving you real-time feedback on your diet using a continuous glucose monitor. One of the most important features of our immediate feelings of well-being and our ability to focus and think and move and have energy, as well as our long-term health, are our blood glucose levels. That is our blood sugar levels. And that's because all the cells and tissues of our body, and especially neurons, nerve cells, rely on glucose for fuel. I realize some of you out there are ketogenic, and yes, you can use ketones for fuel, but the vast majority of people are using glucose for fuel in their cells. If you want to maintain energy and focus throughout the day, you want to keep that blood glucose steady, and you don't want it ever to spike or to drop too much. So you need to understand how different foods and indeed how different activities impact your blood glucose. I started using Levels about a year ago as a way to understand how different foods and exercise and supplements and combinations of food and exercise and even sequencing, like when I do what, how that affects my blood glucose levels. It's been tremendously informative. It's completely reshaped when I exercise, how I exercise, when I eat relative to exercise, etc. So if you're interested in learning more about Levels and trying a continuous glucose monitor yourself, go to levels.link/Huberman. Again, that's levels.link/Huberman. Today's episode is also brought to us by 8 Sleep. 8 Sleep makes smart mattress covers with cooling, heating, and sleep tracking capacity. I've talked many times on the podcast about the fact that getting a great night's sleep is the foundation of mental health, physical health, and all forms of performance. And one of the key variables in getting a great night's sleep is making sure that your sleeping environment is the right temperature. Indeed, your brain and body have to drop by 1 to 3 degrees in order to get into sleep and to stay in deep sleep throughout the night. If your room is too hot or if you're running too warm, you will wake up. In fact, that is why you wake up in the morning. With 8 Sleep, you can adjust the temperature of your mattress and your overall sleeping environment and customize that to you. I started using 8 Sleep some time ago, and it's just been a total game changer. I program mine so that there's a subtle drop in the temperature of my mattress at the beginning of the night, and then it gets progressively cooler, and then it heats up toward morning. Even has this nice little vibrate feature, so it wakes me up by vibrating the mattress a little bit, And of course, that mattress is warming, and warming is the way that we wake up. If you'd like to try 8 Sleep, go to 8sleep.com/Huberman, check out their Pro Pod cover, and save up to $150 at checkout. 8 Sleep currently ships in the USA, Canada, and the United Kingdom. Again, that's 8sleep.com/Huberman to save $150 at checkout. Today's episode is also brought to us by Roka. Roka makes eyeglasses and sunglasses that are of the absolute highest quality, and they also have some unique characteristics. The company was founded by 2 all-American swimmers from Stanford, and everything about Roka eyeglasses and sunglasses were designed with performance in mind. Roka eyeglasses and sunglasses can be worn while running or cycling. If you get sweaty, they won't fall off your face, and they're extremely lightweight. In fact, most of the time I can't even remember that I'm wearing them. I wear Roka eyeglasses when I read at night, so I wear their readers, and I wear sunglasses at various times throughout the day. The great thing about Roka eyeglasses and sunglasses is that even though they were designed for athletic performance, they have a terrific aesthetic. So unlike a lot of so-called performance glasses that make people look like cyborgs, in my opinion, Roka eyeglasses and sunglasses are the sort that you could wear out to dinner, that you could wear to work. They have a terrific aesthetic. If you'd like to try Roka eyeglasses or sunglasses, you can go to Roka, that's ROKA.com, and enter the code Huberman to save 20% off your first order. Again, that's Roka, ROKA.com, and enter the code Huberman at checkout. Let's talk about alcohol, and let's just acknowledge that human beings have been consuming alcohol for thousands of years. If you look at the archaeological evidence from Mesopotamia, you'll find that 5,000 years ago, people had wine vessels. Or if you want to know when people first started distilling alcohol, much to people's surprise, that did not first take place in Ireland. And that's not a joke about the Irish, that you'll see a lot of claims online that the Irish were the first to distill alcohol, but in fact, they were not. It was the Chinese that were the first to distill alcohol, and that took place in China in the 1st century. Alcohol has been used for nutritional purposes. So there are cultures that believe, and indeed still believe, that the calories in alcohol are useful, although later we'll talk about how alcohol calories are indeed empty calories and what an empty calorie really is, why it's called empty. Alcohol has been used for medicinal purposes because indeed it does kill bacteria. And as you'll soon find out, the fact that it kills bacteria, because that is absolutely true, it also kills the good bacteria in your gut, and the destruction of that good bacteria in your gut can lead to things like leaky gut syndrome and has all sorts of issues, and there are ways to deal with those issues, and we'll talk about those. So alcohol has been used for medicinal purposes. It's been used to clean surfaces.